The shadows of Blackwood House. Some stories don't just scare you. They cling to you like damp air you can't shake off. My name is Nora, and I'm a librarian in a small city library where the stacks are quiet, but the shadows always seem to whisper. I've spent years surrounded by books, their pages holding secrets I thought I'd never touch. But last October, I met someone who changed that, a woman named Eleanor Harper, who came into the library late one night, her eyes wild with fear, clutching a letter from a place called Blackwood House. She told me about a manor, a week that broke her, and a presence that wouldn't let her go. Her story sank into me, heavy and cold, leaving me afraid to be alone in the library's back rooms. I'm telling you this because I need you to feel it. The dread, the weight, the way the world feels wrong after you hear it. So, turn down the lights, listen close, and let me take you to that night. This is my story, but it's hers too. It was a rainy October night in 2024, the kind where the library's windows rattled, like they were trying to warn me. I was working the late shift, alone in the stacks, the fluorescent lights flickering just enough to make the shadows dance. The air smelled of old paper and dust, but there was something else, something sharp and metallic that made my skin crawl. Around 10 p.m., the front door creaked open, and in walked a woman, her coat soaked, her face pale as the pages around us. She was maybe in her late 20s, her hair plastered to her cheeks, and she held a cream-colored envelope with a black seal. Her name was Eleanor Harper. I saw it scrawled on the envelope when she set it on the counter, asking to use the microfiche reader. "You okay?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud in the empty library. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope, pulling out a letter. Her eyes darted to the corners of the room, where the security mirrors hung, their surfaces reflecting the stacks in a way that felt... "I'm going to Blackwood House," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "They think I can help them, that I'm sensitive." My heart skipped. I'd heard of Blackwood House. Whispers in the library's occult section. Old articles about a haunted manor where people vanished or went mad. She told me about the invitation from a Dr. Montague, how it called to her ability to sense things others couldn't, changes in the air, voices where there should be none. I felt a chill, not just from her words, but from the way the library seemed to listen, the shadows growing heavier. I gave her a key to the microfiche room, but as she walked away, I saw her reflection in a mirror linger, just a moment too long, like it was watching her go. My stomach twisted, a mix of curiosity and dread, and I knew I had to hear more. That night, after Eleanor left, I couldn't shake her story. I pulled every book we had on Blackwood House, old newspaper clippings, folklore collections, anything that mentioned it. The stories were vague but chilling. A manor built by an alchemist, Arthur Blackwood, in the 1800s, tied to disappearances and strange experiments. I started noticing the library's mirrors more, their reflections showing glimpses of me that felt off, my eyes too dark, my expression too sharp. I took a Polaroid from the staff room to snap a picture of myself, hoping to prove it was just nerves. When the photo developed, my reflection in the background mirror was smiling, a cold, knowing smile I hadn't made. My hands shook as I stuffed it in my pocket, the weight of it like a stone in my chest. I saw Eleanor again 2 days later, back at the library, looking worse, her eyes sunken, her hands fidgeting with the same envelope. "I'm leaving tonight," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For Blackwood House. I have to know what's there." She told me about her sensitivity, how she'd always felt things, cold spots, whispers, a sense of being watched, that she'd hidden since childhood. The letter promised answers, but it scared her too, like it knew too much about her. I wanted to tell her not to go, but her fear was infectious, stirring my own doubts. I'd always been alone, content in the library's quiet, but now I felt exposed, like the stacks were hiding something. She left me a notebook, saying it was her journal, that she couldn't take it with her. "If I don't come back," she said, "read it." My throat tightened as she walked out, her reflection in the door's glass moving a beat too slowly. I read her journal that night, the library's silence pressing in. It was filled with her fears, her childhood in foster care, always feeling like an outsider. She wrote about Blackwood House, how the invitation felt like a trap, but also a chance to understand herself. The pages mentioned Dr. Montague, a scientist obsessed with the veil between worlds, and Arthur Blackwood, whose experiments left the house cursed. My hands trembled as I read, the Polaroid in my pocket feeling heavier. The library felt different now, the mirrors reflecting shadows that shouldn't be there. A figure behind me, a flicker of Eleanor's face. I started avoiding them, keeping my eyes on the books, but the dread followed me. At home, my own mirrors showed the same lag, my reflections smirking when I frowned. I covered them with sheets, but I could still feel their gaze, like the house in Eleanor's story was reaching out to me. I started noticing anomalies. The library's clock would reset to midnight, no matter how many times I fixed it. The microfiche reader would turn on by itself, displaying articles about Blackwood House, missing guests, strange deaths, a fire that never burned the manor down. My dreams were vivid, suffocating. In them, I was Eleanor, walking through Blackwood House, its walls pulsing like a heartbeat, portraits whispering my name. I'd wake up, gasping, my heart racing, the Polaroid showing that same wrong smile. I tried to call my foster brother, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, but the line was dead, static hissing like a voice, saying, "You're here." My loneliness, once a shield, was now a weight, and I felt the house presence in the library, watching, waiting. I went to the microfiche room, hoping to find answers. The air was cold, the machine humming like it was alive. I found an article about Arthur Blackwood, describing a ritual he performed, a blood pact to commune with the dead, binding his soul to the house. A photo showed a mirror in the manor's hall, its frame carved with symbols that matched the ones in my dream. My reflection in the reader's screen was wrong, my eyes black, my mouth moving, whispering, "Say." I ran, but the journal was in my bag when I got home, its pages now describing my shifts, my fears, my secrets, how I'd lied to my foster brother about our parents' accident, how I'd stayed in this job to avoid facing my past. My mind was fraying, torn between reality and the house's pull. The journal became my obsession. I'd read it during breaks, the words pulling me into Eleanor's world. It described Blackwood House as alive, its walls feeding on the fears of its guests, growing stronger with every secret it uncovered. New entries appeared, not in Eleanor's handwriting but mine, detailing my thoughts, my shifts, my life. Nora feels it now. She is part of the house. The library's mirrors were relentless, showing scenes from my past, my foster brother's anger, my guilt over our parents' death, moments I'd buried. My reflection spoke, its voice in my head. "You're hiding, Nora." Just like them. I tried to quit, but my manager wouldn't let me, saying I was too valuable. The mirrors showed my coworkers with cruel intentions, Tom stealing, my boss hiding something darker. The library felt alive, the lights flickering, the air cold and heavy, like Blackwood House was here. One night, I found a small mirror in the library's storage room, hidden behind old books. Its frame was carved with the same symbols from my dreams, its surface dark and still, like a frozen pond. My reflection was wrong, my face twisted, my eyes empty. I smashed it with a bookend, but the shards reassembled overnight, the mirror whole again, waiting on the shelf. The security mirrors showed my life unraveling. My foster brother disowning me, Tom dead in a car crash, my own hands shaking with guilt. I tried to burn the journal, but it wouldn't catch fire. The pages cooled to the touch. The library's air grew thicker, the shadows moving, whispering my name. I felt the house's presence, its cold fingers on my mind, urging me to give in. I drove to the edge of the city, to the road leading to Blackwood House, desperate to find Eleanor. The forest was dense, the air heavy with damp earth and something metallic. I found the manor, its stone walls looming, its windows glowing faintly. The front door was open, and I stepped inside, my heart pounding. The air was cold, the walls lined with portraits whose eyes followed me. I found a dining room, the table set for 4, but it was empty, the chairs covered in dust. A mirror hung on the wall, its surface rippling like water. My reflection was there, but it wasn't me. It was Eleanor, her face pale, her eyes black voids, mouthing, "You shouldn't have come." I felt the house's presence, stronger now, wrapping around my thoughts, pulling me deeper. I couldn't leave the library anymore. The mirrors were everywhere, reflecting truths I couldn't escape. My reflection showed me stealing from my foster brother, lying to cover my shame, choosing solitude to hide my guilt. It showed my coworkers' secrets, Tom's theft, my boss's affairs, their faces twisted in the glass. The worst was seeing myself, not as a quiet librarian, but as someone cruel, manipulating others for control. My laughed reflection, its voice sharp, "You're no different, Nora. You're part of it." The library was a prison, the lights dimming, the air freezing, the shadows whispering my secret. I heard Eleanor's voice in my dreams, begging me to stay away. But the journal kept writing itself, predicting my every move. The first twist came when I found a new Polaroid in my pocket, one I hadn't taken. It showed me in Blackwood House, standing in front of the mirror, but the room was wrong. Walls bleeding, portraits screaming, my hands holding a knife. I burned it, but it was back the next day, unburned, my reflection smile wider. The journal now described a future where I embraced the house's power, using its truths to control others, becoming its keeper. I was losing myself, my thoughts blending with the house's whispers, urging me to stay. The second twist was worse. I found a letter in the library, addressed to me in Eleanor's handwriting, but dated a century ago. It read, "Nora, you are always part of Blackwood House. The mirror chose you before you were born." I realized I wasn't just drawn to Eleanor's story. The house had been waiting for me, my sensitivity a key to its secrets, just like hers. The mirror showed Eleanor, not gone but trapped, her soul in the glass, her face pleading, then smiling cruelly. I was next, the house rewriting me, my memories slipping, my identity fading. I tried to smash the storage room mirror, but it wouldn't break. Its surface rippling, my reflection stepping closer, its hands reaching out. I don't know how I'm still here. One moment, I was in the library, the mirror's whispers drowning my thoughts, my reflection's hands on my throat. The next, I was outside, the pavement cold under my hands, the rain soaking through my clothes. The journal was gone, the Polaroids too, like they'd never existed. I quit the library, moved to a new city with no mirrors, but the police found nothing. No Eleanor, no Blackwood House, just an empty field where the manor should have been. They said I was stressed, maybe delusional. Maybe they're right. But I hear the whispers sometimes, faint, like a voice in the dark. My name, my secrets, the house's call. I see my reflection in windows, in puddles, always with that cruel smile. I avoid libraries, but the shadows follow, the air heavy with that metallic scent. I don't know if I escaped, or if I'm still in Blackwood House, my life a reflection in its glass. Something's out there, something that knows me, and I'm terrified it's still waiting for me to come home. You are in the wrong year. I was scrolling through my phone at 2:47 a.m. when the emergency alert pierced through my headphones. Not the usual amber alert or weather warning. This was different. The screen flickered black, then displayed a message in stark white text. Emergency broadcast, do not ignore. My name is Sarah Chen, and I live in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. At least, I think I do. The past few weeks have been strange. But let me start from the beginning, because maybe if I write this all down, it'll make sense. Maybe someone will believe me. The broadcast began with static, then a voice, calm, clinical, almost robotic. If you are hearing this, you were supposed to say in 2019. This is a recovered broadcast. Do not turn this off. You may think this is 2025. You may believe the years have passed, but they have not. The world did not move forward. You were pulled out. I should have turned it off. Should have laughed it off as some elaborate prank. But something about those words made my blood run cold. Because deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, they felt true. You may remember 2019 as the last year everything felt normal. It was because it was real. You belonged there. That was your last correct placement in time. My hands were shaking now. 2019. The year my sister Emma died in that car accident. The year before everything went to hell. The year before the world stopped making sense. The broadcast continued, and with each word, memories I'd buried started clawing their way to the surface. The voice spoke of apps changing names, celebrities acting wrong, music that felt off. It mentioned people forgetting memories you still carry. I thought about my best friend, Marcus, who swore we'd never been to that concert in Seattle. The one where Emma had dragged us to see that indie band, Neon Dreams. But when I mentioned it last month, Marcus looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Sarah, Neon Dreams broke up in 2018. We never saw them live. But I remembered Emma dancing in the crowd, her auburn hair catching the stage lights. I remembered the way she laughed when the lead singer dedicated a song to all the beautiful souls out there. I remembered holding her hand during the slow song, not knowing it would be one of the last times. The broadcast spoke of a broken year, of living in a replica stitched together from dying timelines. It mentioned decay, rot. I looked at my reflection in my phone's black screen. When had those lines appeared around my eyes? When had my skin started looking so gray? Check your screen time. You've been awake too long. That's not fatigue. It's decay. My screen time for the day read 23 hours and 14 minutes. That couldn't be right. I'd gone to bed at midnight, woken up at 8 a.m. But my phone doesn't lie, does it? Over the next few days, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The sky did look wrong, too pale, like someone had drained the blue from it. The same 3 commercials played on every streaming service. Time moved strangely, hours vanishing or stretching like taffy. I called my mother in Denver. Mom, do you remember Emma's friend Jessica? The one with the black hair who worked at that vintage shop? Honey, Emma didn't have a friend named Jessica. Are you feeling all right? You've been asking strange questions lately. But I remembered Jessica. I remembered her crying at Emma's funeral, clutching a handmade bracelet she'd given my sister. I remembered her telling me that Emma had been acting scared in the weeks before the accident, talking about strange dreams and feeling like she was being watched. I went to Emma's grave that weekend. The headstone read Emma Chan, 1997-2019, beloved daughter and sister. But underneath, in the smaller text, were words I'd never seen before. She tried to warn us. My blood turned to ice. I visited this grave dozens of times. Those words had never been there. I called the cemetery. The woman on the phone was polite but confused. Ma'am, our records show the stone was engraved exactly as requested by your family in 2019. Nothing has been changed. But I knew what I'd seen. Or what I hadn't seen. The world was gaslighting me, and I was starting to understand why. That night, I had the dream again. The one I've been having since 2020. I'm back in our childhood bedroom, and Emma is sitting on her bed, brushing the hair of her old porcelain doll, the one our grandmother gave her before she died. The doll always creeped me out with its glassy blue eyes and that too perfect smile. Sarah, Emma says in the dream, never looking up from the doll, you need to listen to me. You're in the wrong place. What do you mean? I asked. But even in the dream, I know she won't answer directly. She never does. The doll knows, she whispers. Grandma put something in it. Something to keep us safe. But it only works if you believe. I wake up sweating, heart pounding. And for the first time in years, I remember where Emma's doll is. It's in the storage unit across town, along with the rest of her things that my parents couldn't bear to keep in the house. The next morning, I drove to the storage facility. Unit 237. The lock clicks open with the code Emma's birthday, just like always. But when I step inside, everything is wrong. The boxes are arranged differently. Emma's clothes are folded in ways she never folded them. She was messy, chaotic. These are precise military neat. And sitting on top of a box labeled Emma's room, the porcelain doll stares at me with those glassy eyes. I'd never put the doll there. I'd never even touched it after Emma died. But here it is, and clutched in its porcelain hands is a piece of paper. My hands shake as I unfold it. In Emma's handwriting, Sarah, if you're reading this, then you made it this far. The doll is an anchor. Grandma knew about the timeline shifts. She was born in the wrong year, too. Keep it close. It will help you remember what's real. But be careful. They know about the anchors now. They're collecting them. Don't trust anyone who says 2025 is the best year. They're not human anymore. I drove straight to my grandmother's old house in Bend, Oregon. My parents had sold it after she died in 2018, but I needed answers. The new owners, a young couple named the Andersons, were surprisingly welcoming when I explained I was my grandmother's granddaughter and wondered if I could look through the basement for some family items they might have missed. Mrs. Anderson, a petite woman with nervous energy, led me downstairs. Actually, we've been hoping someone from your family would come by. We found some boxes hidden behind a false wall. Couldn't bring ourselves to throw them away, but they're unusual. The basement smelled of sage and something else, something sharp and metallic. In the corner, 3 wooden boxes sat under a dusty sheet. My grandmother's initials were carved into each one. M.C. Margaret Chen. The first box contained journals dating back to the 1960s. My grandmother's careful handwriting filled page after page with observations about temporal displacement and timeline anchoring. She wrote about people who remember things differently, about years that felt wrong, about the need to create physical anchors to maintain connection to your true timeline. One entry, dated December 15, 1987, made my blood run cold. The Chen family line carries sensitivity. We see the breaks, feel the shifts. My mother saw them, her mother before her. Sarah will have it strongest, I can already tell. Emma has some sensitivity, but she's more grounded. Sarah will need protection. The doll will serve as her anchor, but only if she believes. Only if she remembers that not all magic is superstition. Some of it is survival. The second box contained what looked like spell components, crystals, dried herbs, small bones, and photographs. Dozens of them. Pictures of people I didn't recognize, but they all had the same haunted look in their eyes. The same gray pallor I'd noticed in my own reflection. On the back of each photo, my grandmother had written dates and notes. Timeline, Drift 1972. Anchor failure, 1983. Subject retrieved, 1991. Subject lost to false year, 1995. The third box contained a letter addressed to me, sealed with my name written in my grandmother's shaking handwriting, but the ink looked fresh, as if it had been written yesterday. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside, several pages of my grandmother's writing, but the handwriting was different. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, then the timeline collapse of 2020 has begun, and you have survived the initial displacement. You are one of the few with the sensitivity to perceive the breaks. This is both a gift and a curse. I have been trying to reach you from 2019, where I am trapped, just as you are trapped in 2025. Yes, child, I am still alive in real timeline. The Margaret who died in 2018 was a displacement echo. The real me has been fighting to create bridges back to you. The doll I gave Emma was not just a toy. It contains a fragment of the true timeline, a piece of 2019 embedded in porcelain and belief. But Emma's anchor is not enough. You need more. In this basement, behind the water heater, you will find another box. Inside is your true anchor, a mirror that has been in our family for generations. But be warned, looking into it will show you not just your reflection, but reflections from all the timelines you have touched. Some of those reflections are not you. Some of them are things that you want to be. The timeline collapse was not natural. It was caused by a group that has been manipulating temporal streams for decades. They call themselves the Chronos Collective, and they harvest people like us, people who can remember the true timeline. They need our memories to stabilize their artificial realities. Emma discovered this before she died. Her car accident was not an accident. They tried to extract her memories, but she fought back. Her death created a temporal wound that is still bleeding into other timelines. You must gather all the anchors you can find. The doll, the mirror, and one more item that Emma hid before she died. She buried it in the place where you two used to play as children, the old oak tree behind the house where you grew up. Look for the hollow at the base of the trunk. But Sarah, you must hurry. Every day you spend in the false year weakens your connection to the true timeline. I can already see you fading from my perspective. Soon you will either break free or become one of them, a collector for the Chronos Collective, harvesting memories from other displaced souls. Remember, if someone tells you that 2025 is the best year, do not listen. If they seem to know more about your life than they should, run. If they offer to help you adjust to the current timeline, refuse. They are not trying to help you. They are trying to harvest you. Trust the doll. Trust the mirror. And trust your dreams of Emma. She is trying to guide your home. All my love from the real year. Grandmother Margaret. The basement contains one more thing, a recording device. Play the tape inside it. You need to hear what Emma discovered before they killed her. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the old cassette player. Emma's voice filled the dusty basement, but it wasn't Emma I remembered. This Emma sounded terrified, paranoid. Sarah, if you're hearing this, then I'm probably dead, and you're probably starting to notice that the world doesn't make sense anymore. I've been investigating the Chronos Collective for 3 months now, ever since I started having those dreams about Grandma warning me. They're not human, Sarah. Not anymore. They were once, but they've been absorbing so many memories from different timelines that they've become something else. They can look like anyone, sound like anyone, because they have the memories of everyone they've harvested. I found their facility. It's disguised as a medical research center in Ashland, Oregon. They're calling it temporal therapy, helping people adjust to timeline displacement. But it's a lie. They're extracting memories and leaving people as empty shells. The real horror is that some of the people working there are the shells, the leftovers from the harvesting process. They think they're helping people, but they're just meat puppets being controlled by the collective. I've hidden evidence in the hollow of our old oak tree. Photos, documents, a list of names. People who've been harvested. Sarah, our parents' names are on that list. The people we think are mom and dad, they're not. They're shells. The real mom and dad were harvested in 2020. I tried to confront them, and that's when I knew I was in danger. Dad looked at me. Really looked at me, and for just a second, his eyes were completely black, empty. Then he smiled and said, "Emma, dear, you're acting paranoid. Maybe you should see a doctor." But his voice was wrong. Too flat, too controlled. They know I know. I can feel them watching me. Every night I hear them whispering outside my window, but when I look, there's nothing there. Just that awful smell. like ozone and rotting flowers. The doll will protect you, but only if you remember that belief makes it real. Grandma wasn't just superstitious. She understood that consciousness shapes reality, especially in damaged timelines. The placebo effect isn't just medical, it's metaphysical. If you believe the anchor will keep you safe, it will. If you doubt it, you're vulnerable. Sarah, whatever you do, don't trust anyone who claims to want to help you adjust. Don't trust anyone who seems to know too much about your memories. And if you ever see me after I'm dead, don't trust that either. They can wear the faces of the dead. Find the evidence. Expose them. And get back to 2019, where we belong. The tape ended with the sound of Emma sobbing, then footsteps, then silence. I drove to our childhood home in Salem that same night. The current owners were asleep, their house dark against the Oregon sky. I parked down the street and crept through the backyard, hoping the old oak tree was still there. It was massive and ancient, just as I remembered. But something was wrong. The grass around its base was dead in a perfect circle, and the air smelled of that awful combination Emma had described, ozone and rotting flowers. The hollow at the base of the trunk was deeper than I remembered, as if it had been recently excavated. Inside, my fingers found a plastic bag wrapped around a metal box. Emma's evidence. The photos made me sick. Dozens of before and after shots of people I recognized. Neighbors, co-workers, even celebrities. In the before photos, their eyes were alive, human. In the after photos, their eyes were flat, empty, wrong. The documents were worse. Medical reports describing memory extraction procedures and consciousness transplantation. Lists of timeline refugees who had been processed. And at the bottom of the pile, 2 death certificates that made my heart stop. My parents. Real death certificates dated March 15, 2020. Was of death, experimental procedure complications. I thought about the last 5 years, about all the times my parents had seemed, too agreeable, too smooth, never getting emotional about Emma's death the way real parents would. Never crying, never breaking down, never showing the raw grief that should have consumed them. They weren't my parents. They were wearing my parents' faces, living in my parents' house, speaking with my parents' voices. But they were empty shells controlled by something else. The final document in the box was a blueprint of the Kronos Collective facility in Ashland. Emma had marked several locations: memory extraction, shell storage, control center. And at the bottom, in her handwriting, this is where they keep the real timeline. This is how we get home. I should have gone straight to Ashland. Should have exposed the facility, called the police, contacted the media. But I made a mistake. I went home first. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I crept inside, clutching Emma's doll and my grandmother's mirror, my heart pounding. I needed to pack, to gather supplies, to prepare for whatever I might find in Ashland. But as I reached the top of the stairs, I heard voices from my parents' bedroom. Low, whispering voices that didn't sound quite human. "She knows," one voice said. My father's voice, but wrong. "The sensitivity is stronger in this one," my mother's voice replied. "We should have processed her years ago. The collective wants her intact. Her memories are too valuable. She's been to the true timeline recently, in her dreams. She's maintaining a connection. What about the anchors? We'll take them tonight. Without them, she'll drift further into displacement. In a few weeks, she'll be ready for processing." I backed away from their door, terror flooding my system. But as I turned to run, I bumped into something. Someone. Marcus stood in the hallway, but it wasn't Marcus. His eyes were flat black, and that wrong smile was stretching across his face. "Hello, Sarah," he said in Marcus's voice. "We've been waiting for you to come home." More figures emerged from the shadows. My coworkers, my neighbors, the barista from my favorite coffee shop, all with those empty black eyes and those wrong smiles. "You can't run from us," the thing wearing my mother's face said as she appeared in the doorway. "We're everywhere now, in every face you trust, every voice you recognize. We are the new timeline, and you're going to help us stabilize it." I clutched the doll tighter, and for just a moment I could swear I felt Emma's presence. Warm, protective, real. "The anchors won't save you," the Marcus thing said, reaching for me. "We know all about your grandmother's little tricks." But as his hand touched the doll, something happened. He screamed, a sound no human throat could make, and his form flickered. For just a second, I saw what the Marcus disguise was underneath. Something gray and writhing and hungry. I ran. I drove through the night, stopping only for gas and to check that I wasn't being followed. The doll sat on the passenger seat, and I swear its porcelain face looked more lifelike in the dashboard light. Sometimes I thought I saw its lips move, as if it were trying to tell me something. Ashland was a small town nestled in the Rogue Valley, known for its Shakespeare Festival and artistic community. It seemed like the last place you'd find a facility devoted to harvesting human consciousness. But Emma's directions led me to a modern medical complex on the outskirts of town, all glass and steel and corporate blandness. The sign read Temporal Wellness Center, helping you adjust to life's changes. I parked across the street and watched. At 3 a.m., the place should have been empty. But lights were on in several windows, and I could see figures moving inside. People in white coats, walking with that too smooth gait I'd learned to recognize. The doll's weight in my backpack felt heavier as I approached the building. My grandmother's mirror was wrapped in cloth beside it, and both artifacts seemed to pulse with warmth, as if they were alive. The front door was locked, but the service entrance on the side was propped open. I slipped inside, following Emma's hand-drawn map toward what she'd labeled as the control center. The hallways were sterile and white, lit by harsh fluorescent bulbs that made everything look sickly. Doors lined on both sides, each with a small window. I peered through one and immediately wished I hadn't. Inside was a hospital bed surrounded by strange machinery. But it wasn't the equipment that made me gasp. It was the person on the bed. Or what had been a person. Their skull was open, and where their brain should have been a tangle of wires and pulsing organic matter. Their eyes were open, staring at nothing, but their mouth was moving soundlessly. I checked more rooms, dozens of them, all the same. Empty shells connected to machines, their consciousness drained away to power something else. The control center was at the end of the hall, behind reinforced doors. I expected guards, alarms, and some kind of security, but the door was unlocked, as if they wanted me to find it. Inside, banks of monitors showed feeds from all over the country. No, all over the world. Thousands of people are going about their daily lives, but each screen was labeled with things like Shell 4847 and harvest candidate and processing schedule. At the center of the room was a massive tank filled with swirling, luminescent fluid. Floating inside were what looked like brains, but they were connected by streams of light, forming a vast neural network. The harvested consciousness of thousands of people, all networked together. And sitting in front of the tank, in a chair that looked more like a throne, was a figure I recognized. Emma. But not Emma. She turned to face me, and her eyes were not black like the others. They were every color that had ever existed, shifting and swirling like oil on water. When she smiled, it was with the memories of everyone who had ever smiled. "Hello, Sarah," she said in Emma's voice, but layered with thousands of others. "We've been waiting for you." "You're not Emma," I whispered, clutching the doll. "I am Emma," she replied. "And I am Marcus. And your parents, and your grandmother, and everyone else we have collected. We are the sum of all human experience, perfected and eternal." The thing wearing Emma's face stood up, and I could see that her body was connected to the tank by streams of that same luminescent fluid. She was part of the network, but somehow separate. Special. Your sister was special, Sarah. Her consciousness was so strong, so anchored to the true timeline, that when we tried to harvest her, something unexpected happened. Instead of being absorbed into the collective, she became our focal point. Our queen, you might say. Emma, I called out, knowing she was in there somewhere. Emma, I know you can hear me. Remember the concert. Remember neon dreams. Remember dancing in the light. For just a moment, the thing's expression flickered. Something human passed behind those swirling eyes. The concert, it whispered in Emma's true voice. Sarah, is that you? But then the collective reasserted control. Emma is gone, it said in that layered voice. She is part of us now, and soon you will be too. You cannot fight the collective will of humanity. You're not human, I said, pulling out my grandmother's mirror. You're parasites. I unwrapped the mirror, and immediately the room changed. The sterile walls became transparent, revealing the true nature of the facility. It was vast, extending deep underground, filled with thousands of processing chambers. And everywhere, writhing masses of gray organic matter, connected by streams of light. The thing wearing Emma's face hissed as the mirror's light hit it. Its beautiful human disguise began to flicker, revealing something underneath that hurt to look at directly. The sensitivity runs in families, it said, its voice now purely inhuman. Your grandmother fought us for decades before we finally got her. But we learned from her. We learned about the anchors, about the power of belief. In the mirror's reflection, I could see the tank more clearly. The floating brains weren't brains at all. They were cocoons. And inside each one, something was growing. Something that looked like a cross between human and the gray, writhing things I'd glimpsed. We are in evolution, it continued. Human consciousness was messy, chaotic, inefficient. We are perfecting it. Soon, every timeline will be under our control. Every reality will serve our purpose. I held up the doll, and its porcelain face caught the mirror's light. For a moment, I could swear I saw my real grandmother standing behind me in the reflection, her hands on my shoulders. Belief makes it real, I whispered, remembering Emma's words. The anchors work because I believe they work. The collective entity laughed. Superstition and desperation. We have the combined knowledge of thousands of minds. Your little toys cannot. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was focusing on the doll, on the mirror, on my memories of the real 2019. I believed with every fiber of my being that they were more than objects. They were doorways, bridges, ways home. The doll's eyes began to glow with the same light as the mirror. And in that light, I saw her. My real Emma, trapped somewhere inside the collective consciousness, but still fighting. Sarah, she called out, her voice echoing from impossible directions. The tank! Destroy the tank! The collective entity roared as I raised my grandmother's mirror toward the tank. The reflection showed not the grotesque network of stolen consciousness, but something else, a swirling vortex of light and shadow that led elsewhere, or in some other past time. You cannot destroy us, it shrieked in 1,000 voices. We are eternal. We are perfect. But Emma's voice rose above the others. We are imprisoned. Sarah, break the glass. Send us home. I hurled the mirror at the tank with all my strength. The mirror shattered on impact, and where each shard struck the glass, cracks began to spread. The luminescent fluid began to leak out, and with it, streams of pure light that shot in all directions. The collective entity fell to its knees, clutching its head. No! The network. The perfect order. But as the tank drained, something beautiful began to happen. The light streaming from the broken glass began to coalesce into human shapes, translucent, glowing, but recognizably human. Thousands of them, all the consciousness that had been stolen and trapped. And at the center of them all, my sister Emma. Not the twisted thing that had been wearing her face, but the real Emma. My Emma. Thank you, she whispered, her form already beginning to fade. We can go home now. Where? I called out. How do I get back to 2019? She smiled, and in that smile was all the love and mischief I remembered. Follow the light, Sarah. Follow us back to where we belong. The facility began to shake as the stolen consciousness streamed upward, breaking free from their prison. Alarms blared, and I could hear footsteps running in the corridors. The shells, the empty bodies left behind, probably collapsing now that their controlling intelligence was fracturing. I clutched Emma's doll to my chest and ran toward the streams of light that were pouring through cracks in the ceiling. As I touched them, the world began to dissolve around me. I fell through light and darkness, through memories that weren't mine and dreams that were. I saw flashes of other timelines, worlds where the collective had won, where humanity had been completely harvested. But I also saw worlds where they had failed, where people like me and Emma and my grandmother had fought back and won. The doll in my arms grew warm, then hot, then blazing like a star. And in that blazing light, I heard my grandmother's voice. Welcome home, child. I opened my eyes to sunlight streaming through familiar windows. I was in my old bedroom, the one I'd shared with Emma, in our parents' house. But this wasn't the house I'd known for the past 5 years. This was the real house, from the real timeline. Emma was sitting on her bed, brushing the hair of her porcelain doll. She looked up at me and smiled. Bad dream, she asked. I sat up, my heart racing. Emma? You're alive? She laughed. Of course I'm alive, silly. Though I had the weirdest dream last night. Something about gray things trying to steal people's memories. And you were there, trying to save everyone. I looked around the room. Everything was exactly as it had been in 2019. Emma's posters on the walls, her clothes scattered on the floor, her books stacked beside her bed. Real. Solid. What's the date? I whispered. December 23rd, 2019, Emma said, giving me a strange look. Sarah, are you feeling okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. December 23rd, 2019. 3 days before Emma's accident. 3 days before the timeline collapsed. Emma, I said urgently, you can't drive anywhere on December 26th. Promise me. She frowned. Why not? Just trust me. Please. Something bad is going to happen if you drive that day. She studied my face, and I could see her thinking. Emma had always been intuitive, always able to sense when something was important, even if she didn't understand why. Okay, she said slowly. I promise. But Sarah, you're scaring me. What's going on? I wanted to tell her everything. About the collective, about the harvested consciousness, about the 5 years I'd spent in a false timeline. But how could I explain something so impossible? Instead, I got up and hugged her. Really hugged her, feeling the warmth of her real body, smelling her familiar scent of vanilla shampoo and paint. She'd been working on a canvas late the night before. I just love you, I whispered. I love you so much, and I don't want to lose you. She hugged me back, and I felt her relax. You're not going to lose me, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't sleep for the next 3 days. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I was afraid I'd wake up back in 2025, back in the false timeline. Instead, I watched Emma's painting. I watched her laugh at stupid videos on her phone. I watched her argue with our parents about curfew and chores and all the beautiful mundane things that make life real. On December 26th, I made sure she had no reason to leave the house. I convinced her to help me bake cookies for the neighbors. I suggest we have a movie marathon. I did everything I could to keep her safe and close. At 3:17 p.m., the exact time the police report had said the accident occurred, I felt a strange shift in the air, like reality holding its breath. Emma paused in the middle of decorating a cookie, her face going distant. That's weird, she said. For a second there, I felt like I was supposed to be somewhere else. But you're here, I said quickly. You're safe. You're home. She smiled and went back to her cookie. The moment passed. That night, as we were getting ready for bed, Emma suddenly grabbed my arm. Sarah, she said, I keep having flashes of that dream. The one about gray things. But it doesn't feel like a dream anymore. It feels like a memory of something that happened to someone else. I took her hands in mine. They were warm and real and solid. Maybe it was, I said. Maybe in another timeline, things went differently. But not here. Here, you're safe. She nodded, but I could see she was troubled. In the dream, or memory, or whatever it was, I was trying to warn you about something. Something about people who look like our family but aren't really them. My blood ran cold. If Emma was remembering the false timeline, did that mean the collective was still out there? Still a threat? What else do you remember? I asked. Fragments, she said. A facility. Stolen mines? And me, but not me. Something wearing my face. She shuddered. Sarah, what if it wasn't just a dream? What if somewhere out there's a version of reality where I died, and you spent years fighting monsters? I didn't know how to answer that, because of the truth was, I wasn't entirely sure we were safe. The collective had been vast, powerful, spread across multiple timelines. Just because I'd escaped their false 2025 didn't mean they were gone. Then we stay vigilant, I said finally. We watch for signs. We trust our instinct. And we never ever take for granted that the people we love are really who they seem to be. It's been 6 months since I returned to 2019. Emma is still alive, still painting, still being wonderfully, chaotically human. We never speak directly about what happened or what might have happened in another timeline, but I can tell she remembers fragments. Sometimes I catch her staring at her reflection with a worried expression or testing our parents with obscure questions about our childhood. The porcelain doll sits on our shared dresser, its glassy eyes watching over us. I've learned to read its subtle changes in expression, a slight tilt of the head when something's not quite right, a barely perceptible smile when we're truly safe. 3 times now the doll has warned me. Once our mailman's eyes were the wrong color, too flat, too empty. I steered Emma away from him until he moved on to the next house. Once, a new neighbor seemed to know too much about our family history. And once, our own mother came home from work speaking in syntax that was just slightly off, using phrases she'd never used before. That was the worst. Having to pretend everything was normal while watching for signs that the thing wearing my mother's face was planning to harm us. But by morning, she was back to normal, irritated about the dishes in the sink and worried about Emma's college applications. I think the collective still exists, scattered across timelines, weakened but not destroyed. They probe our reality sometimes, testing the boundaries, looking for ways in. But the anchors hold. Emma's doll, the fragments of my grandmother's mirror that I've carefully collected and hidden around the house, the protective circles of salt and iron that I refresh every full moon following instructions from grandmother's journals. Emma thinks I'm being paranoid, but she humors me. She's started carrying a small piece of the mirror in her pocket, and she never goes anywhere alone after dark. We've developed a code. If either of us says 2025 is the best year, it means we're in immediate danger and need to run. We haven't had to use it yet, but we've come close. The hardest part is not knowing if we're truly safe or just living in another elaborate prison. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if this 2019 is real, or just another false timeline more sophisticated than the last. The doubt eats at you, makes you question everything. But then Emma laughs at something stupid on TV, or our dad burns dinner and fills the house with smoke while trying to open windows, or our mom falls asleep on the couch with a book on her chest. And I remember what real feels like. It's messy and imperfect and beautiful in ways that the collective could never replicate. Still, I keep watching. I keep the anchors close. And every night, I whisper a prayer to whatever forces helped me find my way home. Keep us in the real timeline. Keep us safe from the hungry dark. Keep us human. Because somewhere out there, in the spaces between realities, the gray things are still searching, still harvesting, still building their perfect sterile paradise from the stolen dreams of the displaced. But not here. Not in this timeline. Not while I'm watching. The doll's eyes catch the moonlight as I write this, and for just a moment, I swear I see my grandmother's face reflected in them. She nods once, approvingly, then fades back into porcelain and glass. We are the guardians now, Emma and I, protectors of the real world, keepers of the true timeline, and we will never stop watching for the signs. Because in the end, the most terrifying thing about the collective wasn't their power to steal memories or wear familiar faces. It was how easy it would be to mistake their perfect empty world for home. But home isn't perfect. Home is real. And real is worth fighting for, no matter how many timelines you have to cross to find it. The clock on the wall ticks toward midnight, marking another day successfully defended. Another day where the people I love are exactly who they're supposed to be. Tomorrow, I'll check the anchors again. I'll watch for signs. I'll keep us safe. Because this is 2019, and we belong here. And nothing. Not the collective, not the gray things, not the false years that stretch like traps between the moments. Nothing will take us away from home again. The doll smiles in the darkness, and Emma sleeps peacefully in the bed across from mine. Her breathing steady and warm and beautifully, perfectly human. We made it home, but the real horror isn't over. It's just beginning. Because now I know the truth. There are thousands of timelines out there, and in most of them, the collective has won. The gray things wear human faces and live human lives, and slowly, carefully convert reality to their need. We're not just survivors. We're the resistance. And tomorrow we start fighting back. The end. Or is it? If you're reading this and some of it feels familiar, if you've been having dreams about years that don't exist, or if the people around you seem just slightly wrong, check your screen time. How long have you been awake? And remember, belief makes it real. Hold on to what's true. Hold on to what's home. The Watchers are always listening.
The mist over Mercy, General. I've always been drawn to the unexplained. The moments that slip through the cracks of logic and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. It's not just curiosity. It's a need to understand what lies beyond the veil of the everyday. A few months ago, while digging through obscure horror forums, I stumbled across a thread on a site called The Ghost in My Machine. It was buried deep. A post from a user who claimed to be a nurse at a small hospital called Mercy General. They described something so chilling, so impossible that it's haunted me ever since. I reached out, and after weeks of back and forth, they agreed to share their story in full. What I heard shook me to my core. Fear, awe, and a desperate need to tell others. I can't keep this to myself. You need to hear it too, exactly as it was told to me. This is the story of Sarah Miller, a nurse who saw something that changed her forever. My name is Sarah Miller, and I've been a nurse at Mercy General for 6 years. It's a small hospital in a quiet town, the kind where everyone knows your name, and the most excitement we get is a broken leg or a bad flu. I work the night shift in the ICU, where the air is always heavy with the hum of machines and the weight of lives hanging in the balance. I love my job, even when it's exhausting, even when it breaks my heart. But after what happened last spring, I don't know if I'll ever feel safe in those sterile halls again. The fear clings to me, like a cold sweat I can't shake. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. The mist. The shape. The thing that shouldn't have been there. It was a stormy night. The kind where the wind howls like something alive, rattling the windows of the hospital. I was on my third double shift that week. My eyes burning from lack of sleep. My mind foggy with the kind of tired that makes you question your own thoughts. The ICU was quiet. Just the steady beep of monitors and the occasional groan from a patient. My coworker, Emily, was at the desk, scrolling through her phone, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. We'd been through too many rough nights together to bother with small talk. But I felt it, a prickle on my neck, like someone was watching me. I chalked it up to exhaustion, but it wouldn't go away. Our patient that night was Mr. Thomas Reed, a 68-year-old man with a heart condition that had landed him in our care more times than I could count. He was a kind soul, always cracking jokes even when he could barely breathe. But that night, he was different. His eyes were wide, darting around the room like he was seeing things we couldn't. "Sarah," he whispered when I checked his IV, his voice trembling. "There's something here. It's waiting for me." I squeezed his hand, told him it was just the meds, but my stomach twisted. His words felt like a warning, and I couldn't shake the dread pooling in my chest. Around 2 a.m., Thomas's monitor started screaming. His heart rate flatlined, and the room erupted into chaos. Emily and I rushed in, our training kicking in despite the panic clawing at my throat. We started CPR, my hands pressing hard against his chest, counting compressions while Emily bagged him. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of antiseptic and something else. Something sour, like rotting fruit. I kept my focus on Thomas, his face pale and still, but that prickle on my neck grew sharper, like invisible eyes boring into me. I told myself it was just adrenaline, just the stress of the moment. But then I saw it. A mist rose from Thomas's chest. At first, I thought it was my imagination, a trick of the dim light or my tired eyes. But it wasn't. It was thick, almost solid, curling upward like smoke but moving with purpose. It shaped itself, slowly, deliberately, into the outline of a man. Thomas's outline. His face, his slumped shoulders, even the slight limp in his left leg. It hovered there, above his body, staring down at us. My hands froze mid-compression, my breath catching in my throat. Emily gasped, her hands trembling on the ambu bag. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Do you see that?" I couldn't answer. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. The Miss Thomas turned its head. Its eyes, empty, glowing holes, locking onto mine. I felt exposed, like it could see every fear, every secret I'd ever buried. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't move. The mist began to drift toward the ceiling, slow and deliberate, like it was being pulled somewhere we couldn't follow. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. Thomas's monitor flatlined for good. We called it at 2:17 a.m. Emily and I didn't talk about it. We couldn't. We finished our shift in silence, our hands shaking as we filled out the paperwork. But the image of that mist haunted me. I started noticing things after that night. Shadows moving in the corners of my vision. Whispers in the halls when no one was there. I'd catch myself staring at patients, wondering if I'd see it again. My anxiety, which I'd always managed to keep under control, started to spiral. I'd lie awake at night, replaying Thomas's last words, wondering if he'd known something was coming for him. I started to doubt my own mind, questioning whether I'd really seen what I thought I had. Was it a hallucination? A trick of exhaustion? Or was it something real? Something that proved the soul exists, and that it doesn't always leave quietly. A week later, I was back in the ICU, trying to act normal, but the hospital felt different. The air was heavier, the shadows darker. I kept thinking about Thomas, about the way his missed self had looked at me. I started researching, digging into old forums and obscure blogs, looking for anything that could explain what I'd seen. I found stories, nurses in other hospitals, paramedics, even a librarian who'd seen something similar in a hospice wing. They all described the same thing: a mist, a shape, rising from the body at the moment of death. Some called it the soul. Others called it something else, something that didn't belong here. The more I read, the more I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. My anxiety turned into paranoia. I started to feel like the hospital itself was watching me, waiting for me to slip up. One night, I was alone in the break room, sipping cold coffee and trying to calm my nerves. The lights flickered, just for a second, but it was enough to make my heart race. I heard a sound, a low, guttural hum, like a voice trapped in static. I turned, expecting to see Emily or one of the other nurses, but the room was empty. The hum grew louder, and then I saw it, a faint mist, curling up from the floor, forming the shape of a woman. She was tall, her features blurred but familiar, like someone I'd known long ago. Her eyes, those same empty, glowing holes, fixed on me, and I felt a wave of despair so crushing I nearly collapsed. It wasn't just fear. It was grief, loss, a lifetime of pain condensed into a single moment. I stumbled back, knocking over my coffee, and the mist vanished. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Emily had already started avoiding me, her eyes darting away whenever I tried to bring up that night with Thomas. My best friend, Rachel, thought I was overstressed, maybe even delusional. She'd always been the practical one, the one who told me to get a grip when my anxiety got bad. But this wasn't just anxiety. This was something real, something that was following me. I started to notice patterns. Patients who died on my shift, their monitors flatlining right after I felt that prickle on my neck. Each time, I'd see a glimpse of mist, a fleeting shape before it disappeared. I started to wonder if I was cursed, if I was somehow drawing these things to me. The breaking point came a month later. I was in the ICU, checking on a new patient, Mrs. Clara Hayes. She was in her 80s, frail but sharp, with a smile that reminded me of my grandmother. She'd been admitted for pneumonia, but her condition was stable. I liked her. She had a way of making me feel calm, even with everything going on. But that night, as I adjusted her oxygen, she grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "You've seen them, haven't you?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "The shadows, the ones that take us." My blood ran cold. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked. "Mrs. Hayes, you're just tired," I said. But she shook her head, her nails digging into my skin. "They're not what you think," she said. "They're not souls. They're something else. They've been here longer than we have." Before I could ask what she meant, her monitor started beeping. Her heart rate plummeted, and I called for help. Emily and Dr. Carter rushed in, but it was too late. As we worked on her, I saw it again. The mist, rising from her chest, shaping itself into Clara's form. But this time, it didn't drift upward. It turned, its glowing eyes locked onto me, and it smiled. I screamed, stumbling back into the wall. Emily grabbed my arm, her face pale. "Sarah, what's wrong?" she yelled, but I couldn't answer. The Miss Clara reached out, its hand brushing my cheek, and I felt a jolt of pain, like every nerve in my body was on fire. Memories flooded my mind, moments I'd buried, like the fight with my sister that ended our relationship, the guilt over my father's death, the shame of every mistake I'd ever made. It was like the mist was feeding on my pain, pulling it out of me and twisting it into something worse. Then it was gone, and Claire was declared dead at 3:42 a.m. I quit the next day. I couldn't go back. The hospital felt like a trap, like the walls themselves were alive with whatever those things were. I moved out of town, hoping distance would help, but it didn't. The shadows followed me. I see them in my apartment, in the corners of my vision, in the reflections of windows at night. I hear that hum, that guttural static, when I'm alone. My anxiety is worse than ever, and I can't tell if it's my mind breaking, or if they're still here, watching me, waiting. I've tried to research, to find answers, but every lead takes me deeper into stories of black magic, of curses that cling to those who've seen too much. Some say the mist is a soul, others say it's a demon, a parasite that feeds on despair. I don't know what's true, but I know one thing. They're not gone. Last night, I saw Clara again. Not in a dream, not in my mind. Standing at the foot of my bed, her mist form glowing in the dark. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. You can't escape. I don't know if I'm losing my mind, if I'm cursed, or if I've stumbled into something no one was meant to see. All I know is that I'm terrified, and I can't keep this to myself anymore. I need you to know what I saw, what I felt, because if they're real, if they're out there, then none of us are safe. The story doesn't end with answers. I wish it did. I wish I could tell you what those mists were, or why they chose me. But the truth is, I don't know. Maybe it was my own fear that gave them power, my own doubts that let them in. Maybe they've always been there, waiting for someone to notice. All I know is that I've changed. The world feels darker now, like there's a shadow behind every smile, a hum beneath every silence. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Be careful what you let into your heart. Fear, guilt, despair. They're not just feelings. They're invitations.